Hello and welcome to The Reasonably Good Life. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Brooks. I'm a licensed psychologist and we're covering so many topics that have to do with well-being. And today I have a special guest who is interviewing me. It is Karlys Fritsch of St. Bonaventure University in New York City. Karlys is in an LPC graduate program, and that's to get her licensed professional counselor certification so she can practice as a therapist. I would assume that's what you're not to be a gardener or anything, because you're in the totally wrong program. If that was, you want to do landscape architecture, it's just the wrong program. So I'm going to turn it over, and I don't know what questions you're going to ask, but my guess has something to do with psychology, the practice, and therapy, and we'll just take it from there.
That's right. So hi, nice to meet you. Nice to see you. Nice to talk with everyone who's listening. Yep. So that's right. I'm Karlys Fritsch from St. Bonaventure University. It's actually not in New York City. It's in a small near Lake Buffalo. So pretty far out there. Yeah. Okay. I will be visiting for one of my residencies and also for graduation. So that'll be super exciting.
Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah. How far is Buffalo from New York City?
I think it's about like a 5-hour drive.
Ooh, ouch.
It's far. It's far. And it's in the boonies for sure.
I thought Texas was only that big that you needed 5 hours to get from one city.
That's so true, isn't it, about Texas? So yeah, I live in Dallas and I'm doing this program online.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
You look at the power of screens. Like, isn't that awesome?
That's true. Your education. It can be both good and bad. And for this one, it's good. This one is a good one.
Yes. All right.
So yeah. I'm in class 4 of 20 before graduation. So I'm in the beginning.
20. Oh, okay. All right. You're just a baby. You're like a toddler. A toddler in graduate school.
Yes, right now, this is true. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to interview you specifically on the class, which is ethics, basically, code of ethics. That's,
I hope I have those. I try.
I think you will. I've made my questions as creative as I could, so I'm pretty sure you'll be able to.
You're not trying to stump me with.
No, I absolutely would never do that ever.
I'm going to shut this down right now. If you try to.
No, they're good. They're good, healthy questions. Like, we're talking about well-being, so the focus is on that. The focus is on that. So I'll start right off the bat with the topic of this one is managing your personal and professional life. So for example, for me, how I manage things, work, because I do work as well, part-time. And personally, like I do a lot of self-care. Like I lift weights 3 days a week. I meditate daily. I have a daily reading that's for education purposes, and I journal. So, what are sort of some things that you do to manage your personal and professional life?
That's a great question, and kudos for you to be on the ball with this sort of thing, because I say self-care isn't selfish. It's very important for all of us, I would say, especially for anyone working in healthcare. And I'm a big believer in it. I'm a big believer in life balance, and I espouse that to my clients. And so I try to practice what I preach. So I think that self-care is the bedrock of our mental health and well-being, actually tied to physical health too, because it's, mind, body's all connected. Yes. So I try to get enough sleep. I think that's one of those, it's not sexy, it's not cool to talk about, but basically if we don't get enough sleep, we're the relationship between sleep deprivation and mental health issues is very well researched, and it's a very robust connection. It's very real. So unless we meet those basic needs, we're gonna pay the piper. So you got sleep, healthy eating. I try to do that. And I'm pescatarian, used to be vegetarian, but I've added fish a little bit to my diet. I'm a big exerciser, and there's a lot of research to show that the benefits of exercise are as or more effective than any antidepressant. If you could bottle up the benefits of exercise and sell it, you'd be a multi-billionaire. So I exercise pretty much every day. I trail run. I've done martial arts a long time, yoga, weightlifting, kind of a variety, hiking. So those kind of things, it's pretty much every day. And then social, spending quality time with other people, with friends. So I went on a trail run with a friend this morning, and it's win-win. On that, you get the benefits of outdoors, exercise, and social all rolled up into one. Try not to drink too much. Anything in excess can be problematic. Vacation, just went on a vacation for spring break with the family. So family time. I said this in another podcast. I'm a nerd or a geek. I prefer geek. I think I play like Dungeons and Dragons, like the fantasy role-playing game with dice, and play that with my family, especially my kids. Tennis, pickleball, try to do family activities. So all those things I think are important. So, and I do some meditation and mindfulness and kind of incorporate that into my day and weave it in little ways. And I think all those are really important to my well-being, which then allows me to be more present and able to help my clients if I'm in a good headspace. So that's why I think it's not selfish for our self-care, because if you run into emotional contagion, our emotions spread in a network, so that much like a virus, and the epidemiologists have studied this. There's a great book called Connected, The Surprising Power of Our Social Networks by Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler, where they go into this. But basically, our moods, our emotions affect those around us for good or for ill. So when I'm happy, it not only affects my friends, but my friends' friends and my friends' friends' friends. So it spreads pretty deep. So therefore, when I work on my well-being, it's not selfish because it helps other people be happy as well. It helps me be nicer to the barista at the coffee shop, or the bagger at the grocery store, to my wife, to my kids, to my friends, in a better mood for my clients. So yeah, that's why I do take that very seriously and work quite a bit on self-care.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I fully follow everything you're saying. I'm a mother of 3. I'm older. I'm almost 40 now. And you mentioned some really great things about also interacting with your family as part of self-care, because it is really important. And the social network of all of us, like you said, just like a virus, everything that's happening to us therefore manifests through everyone else.
Right. Yeah. I think you got it. And I think you're on the probably ahead of knowing this. Like, sometimes when people are young, they might miss that. I hope with age, as we get older, we have some wisdom from our own experiences that we can reflect upon and go, oh yeah, staying up too late drinking, I pay the piper in the morning, and I'm just groggy, and I'm just not feeling myself. And you sort of, okay, getting to bed early and stuff.
You start collecting the data, and you're saying, oh, I've reviewed this now, and I can see it's not working out.
Yeah, it only took me 500 times to learn that lesson, but
okay, well, that's part of growth, right?
That is
easier than others.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll go into the next one. This was hard for me to come up with a creative question. Okay, so it's on cultural diversity. So race, ethnicity, cultural influence, gender, age, socioeconomic status. They're all part of our identity, right? Cultural diversity. So, is there something you can share or experience that you've had, like either personally or professionally, with different cultures, or specifically, how do you honor that diversity? Because this to me seems like a very, I don't know, it's tough for me to ask about it, but I don't know why it is. It just is. How does it show up for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And at different points in my career, I've worked with greater diversity. And I guess in general, I just try to meet people with where they're at. Like, I don't want to assume gender or culture or ethnicity are front and center for anyone, because it depends on that individual. So I try to meet everyone with where they're at, or age, is another. It's like, well, what maybe they're going through a midlife crisis, but I don't want to assume that because they're middle-aged that they're struggling with coming into middle age and letting go of their youth or whatever. It's like, it's what I find what works best in the research sort of bears this out with therapy outcomes is every individual is different. So there's more within group differences than between group differences. You've probably heard that. So like if I let's take, gender or the whole thing, sex, gender, it gets kind of fuzzy sometimes, but let's just say, male and female, that, okay, what are biological differences? What are gender differences? But like within the people who identify as female and the people who identify as male, there's tremendous diversity. If you average out all males and all females, or people who identify, and try to say what are the big differences, they're going to be rather small. Mm-hmm. So sure. you have to meet the person with where they're at on whatever it is and what they're bringing to the table, and align with what do they want to work on. It comes down to what is it, how are they feeling, in general with their life, and what changes would they like to make? What do you think would help you be happier or less stressed or less anxious, and that might have something to do with gender or ethnicity, and it might not.
It might not. Yeah.
So I don't want to assume. I just want to try to be the therapist the person needs me to be to get the results they're looking for.
Yeah, I like that. It makes it less muddy.
Right. And, flexible. I think it's always be flexible. And here's the problem is that there's so much diversity with people out there. I'm not the best fit for everyone. So I don't specialize in gender identity or eating disorders or something, and not against, working, but it's like, I can only help so many people, or I don't work with younger kids. And it's like, okay, there are people who do that. They have the background, the specialization, yes. the techniques or strategies to work with a certain population. It's like, well, if I'm not a good fit, and if they have a gender identity, if that's their main thing, and it's a teenager, I work with teens, but if it's gender identity, I don't think I'm the best fit.
Right, you refer out.
Yeah, I'd refer out to know my limits, and so if someone had a very complicated cultural or racial, thing, I'd see, well, maybe I'm not the best fit, and I try to pre-screen, just to see
before,
before an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that was a good answer for such a kind of a interesting subject, in my opinion.
Yes. It is.
Yeah. Okay. So this next one's on ethical issues in general. So I looked up just because I was curious. I've never worked in a clinical setting. I mean, well, I have in ABA, applied behavioral analysis, but it's very different, but very different, but or maybe not. Actually, we could get into that. But
yeah, my wife has a ABA practice, and I helped co-found in ABA Connect in Austin, Texas.
I'm a part-time RBT. I only do very little bit of it now, but I've been doing it for 14 years, and my oldest son has autism, but my specialty is actually adults with it now. Yeah,
it's a good specialty, because I think it's much needed.
It is very much needed, and it's a great specialty. But I worked at first in clinic and with it, and I did not like it. I saw a lot of things that were in the 2 clinical office that were just abuse. So I got out of that, and I found a company that works remotely from whomever's house, school, churches. So you would work in their environment every day and work with the family, the support group, which I loved way better. And I worked for that company for 4 years. I really enjoyed it. But now I'm actually doing something totally different because I'm a mother of 3 and doing this program. So now I'm substitute teaching.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Which is really fun because it's fun because even though I'm going into a clinical setting, I'm not going into the school counselor setting. It is interesting to apply what you've learned to everywhere that you are, right? Because isn't that like kind of the point of life, is to put that in every aspect?
Exactly. Yeah.
So this was a weird question, not weird, but I guess just because it's about, I looked up the most common ethical issues in a workplace. So some examples were, this is very interesting, unethical leadership, toxic workplace culture, discrimination, unrealistic goals, and questionable use of technology. So have you experienced, you obviously work in a clinical setting because we went over that. Have you experienced any of that, or do you just work for yourself at this point, or whatever?
Yeah. A great question. I had a group practice, Austin Psychology and Assessment Center, Apicenter, for 13 years and was the director of that. And when COVID hit, I wrote a book called Tech Generation: Raising Balanced Kids in a Hyper-Connected World that came out in 2018. I've been doing more presenting, and I was very interested in more writing, presenting, but I had this group practice. And I was already sort of moving that direction of more solo stuff. And then when COVID hit, I was like, maybe, at that point, we didn't know, will vaccines ever be out? How long is this going to go? How bad is it? And we did psychological assessments, mostly of kids, and those are in person. So everything got shut down for a while. And I didn't have the stomach or the passion to drive through it. And there were so many unknowns at that point. Okay. So right now I'm solo. So at this point, I don't run into some of the ethical, like in a workplace. For psychologists in particular, and what I've heard, the top 2 are things to do with confidentiality, like breaches of confidentiality. And then it would be inappropriate relations with clients. I went to a business of private practice workshop when I first started private practice, and they scare the heck out of you in graduate school about ethics, like all these ways you could, like, I don't know, just
jeopardize yourself.
Oh, yeah. And really the guy at the business of private practice workshop, he said, the main thing is don't sleep with your clients. I was like, I think I can manage that. I think I got that checkbox. I think that, in inappropriate relations of, boundaries, like of, maybe in this day and age, like texting your clients and, things like that. Privacy stuff, but confidentiality, like I work with teens, and a common one is, parents want to know how therapy's going, and they're also telling me they want to email me to give me a big update of what's going on with Johnny or something like that. And so they may tell me something like, well, Johnny's failing all his classes, we caught him smoking and blah, 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 blah. They give me a long update, and then I meet with Johnny. Is like, hey, Johnny, how's it going? Oh, everything's fine.
Great.
Classes, everything's, I got B's and up and everything.
Oh, that's so awkward.
Well, it is. It's really awkward. So I have these front end conversations with the parents about, look, I understand that, but I need to be transparent because that's really awkward. Like if I'm sitting on information and Johnny doesn't want to tell, I don't want to do a gotcha. That's awful.
That's terrible.
Yeah. So I kind of like, hey, mom and dad, maybe, and, talk to Johnny's, maybe sometimes we have meetings all together to talk about stuff. Johnny, your parents will want to update me. What are your thoughts about that? Are you okay? So, or if they email me, they CC their kid. So
my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so, yes. Wow.
Yeah. So just say up front, like if you need to tell me, let Johnny know you're telling me. So, if you need to update me, I want Johnny to know that you're updating me, because otherwise it's really awkward.
Otherwise you're like really the third wheel now.
Right. It puts me, and those are the kind of things that, Another one would be you're seeing one and they're like, oh, you're so helpful with Johnny. His younger sister Stacy's having some trouble. Could you see her too? Because you're doing such a great job with Johnny. And then you're like, ooh, now I'm in the, I don't want to do that. But it could even be, well, it's Johnny's friend. Or another one is you see kids or teens, and then it turns out they're going to the same school, but you met them separately, so
Weird.
Each kid doesn't know that you're seeing the other. And of course you don't say anything.
Oh yeah.
But there's a possibility that, Johnny could talk to, William.
Right.
And, like, hey, that would be awkward. Or running into each other in the waiting
public,
room.
or in the right.
Like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, I didn't know what's wrong. Those are kind of those real world things that can happen that are awkward, and you have to kind of work around. Usually, when you're caught in some kind of ethical dilemma, which I almost want to say they don't teach you about in grad school. You almost have to encounter. I mean, the big ones, they're obvious ones, like don't sleep with your clients and stuff. You're like, okay, duh. But these like messier ones, you don't know till you run into them, and then you're like scratching your head, and you reach out to colleagues, and rarely do you have to decide in that moment, like within 5 minutes,
I see.
Usually you have time to go, ooh, I'm not sure what to do about this. Let me reach out to a colleague. Let me check. Sometimes I call the state board and ask, and say.
I will say that is in the Code of Ethics, actually, like the recent one that I read was the 2017. It said that reach out to colleagues for help when needed. So that is one of the things you can do. By law, I guess. And they, just so you're aware, in graduate school recently, like right now, they do case studies. And we did one in class recently where it was like that, where you're like, there are so many complicated things to this particular, there's no right answer. And then also there's just so many facets that it's like, well, where do we start with this? Like, how do we even, and some of it's legal, some of it's just at plain old ethics,
Right.
So it's sticky. It can be sticky.
Yes. And I hate to, this might sound wrong, but I'll say it anyway, is a lot of it's common sense. Like if you're just being, thinking of what ethics about, and you're thinking of the welfare of your client, and you keep that front and center, some of these tell you what you should do, or at least it's a problem worth more investigation and follow up. So you can say,
I'm making a slideshow right now on that, and the whole time, every slide, I want to be like, use common sense. This is logical, but they create it so detailed because it's not always just like this.
Right. I think that main one thinking of is just being aware that you're stumbling upon a dilemma or a problem that's worthy of more consideration, research, and consultation. So I think that's like the key, that if you're so oblivious that you don't know or don't care, then that's a problem. So if you're like, say, hey, I need to be thinking of the welfare of my clients, and this is putting me in a tough bind because this could turn south. If this happened, if I play this wrong, it can blow really up in my face. You get that spider sense tingles, where you're like,
I don't know about this. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. And what's funny is all these questions I'm asking, they all kind of do bleed into each other, because they're all what we're saying, like some common sense stuff, but then also some like, because like my next question is asking, basically, have you ever encountered any legal concerns come up, any complications? Like, I hope not. I didn't even like writing the question. I feel like I'm giving it energy and I don't want to.
Not where I've gotten in trouble. One that they don't talk about that I have seen, and this is a real problem these days, is forensic psychologists that work in like custody, capacities where they have to do evaluations and and here's the thing, in this day and age of social media, if you're a psychologist between two parents that are like in a divorce situation and you're trying to do, let's say, an evaluation or like of the fitness of the parent or something, and that's their specialty, forensic psychology, and they have to speak to the court and, they get cross-examined and all that. Well, guess what? There's going to be one unhappy parent. And in this day and age is you will get just, destroyed on Yelp, on RateMDs, on health grades, on Google, and they'll say, and sometimes you have parents who, granted, maybe the psychologist does drop the ball sometimes, but most of the time I would take it, they're just trying to do the best job they can. And if they end up citing, saying things in a way that end up favorable to one parent over the other, the party that's upset, now you can, get raked through the coals and from the parents' point of view, you screwed up. So they're just venting and evaluating based on it's not that they're lying.
Emotional reactions.
Yeah, they're like very unhappy and they let you know about it, and it's, I've heard some horror stories from psychologists of doing that type of work, and oh boy, that would scare me,
it would scare me too. I don't want to put that kind of work down because it is necessary, unfortunately.
Right.
However, I don't plan to work in a I don't want to, as of now, right? Things can change. Work in such a pathological, I don't want to focus on sickness or on, which is hard in this field, by the way, because you do need to diagnose and you do need to. Anyway. Okay, so the next one kind of goes into counseling in general. Never say never, right? I currently have zero interest in couples counseling. I've been a client in couples counseling a couple of times. It's a lot of use of the word couple, by the way. This seems a bit complicated with managing boundaries or feeling more like a mediator. Do you do couples counseling? Have you done it? And what's your say?
I've done a little, probably poorly. I'm kind of at very top level. I've done a little couples counseling, but I've done enough to know that I'm not a couples counselor, nor do I want to be. It's kind of its own specialty. And it's really, I've done it more in terms of parent consultation where two parents are trying to parent, and they have differing ideas about, and I'm trying to manage a little more family systems, a little bit of couple, but, that just gets to be, it's tough. Like, stuff is unfolding in the session of like, I can't believe you cheated on me. You're a drunk and, whatever, like some really painful stuff and just like, raw wounds right there that give credit where credit's due for the folks who are in the trenches and do that type of work. It is tough work.
It seems like frontline work there. Like,
yes,
wow.
It is. Yeah.
Okay. But group therapy is very different. I told you earlier, I did 1 year of DBT as a client.
Yep.
Which was fascinating and amazing. And I fell in love with it.
Why don't you, for listeners, why don't you explain DBT real quick?
Well, dialectical behavioral therapy since I'm not an expert in it, I don't want to, the only thing I can say about it is it's very systematic and it falls on, but very by the book. If you feel this way, look at these options. It kind of, in a way, as a client, because I'm going to tell you from the client point of view, it kind of is like preparing for you to be your own therapist and how to use the skills that are being taught to you in your everyday life. And as part of the program, you do one-on-one with your DBT therapist, but you also do once a week with group therapy, which I was a little terrified of, but it was interesting. We all came to the table with very different struggles. We realized we actually didn't have that different of struggle. The stories, the history, perspective was all different. Sure. But the feelings and the want for change, the commitment, that was all the same from every one of us as a human being. And I really enjoyed that. So
yeah. I've only been exposed to a little bit of it, but my understanding is that it's kind of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, mixed with mindfulness and maybe some relational work, and like you said, some group work. And another one that's sort of similar that probably overlaps is ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, which I really like, which is another one that combines elements of cognitive behavior therapy, mindfulness, and probably some positive psychology stuff mixed in. And I think that idea, and I tell that if like for my clients, I want to help them have tools in their toolkit so that in effect they can be their own therapist, and I put myself out of a job.
Yeah. Well, we do want to empower though. And if everyone's always going to need help, even through time, right? Like maybe I need help for a year and then I'm good for 6 months, but then, hey, I'm having some issues.
That's what it seems like that's the natural progression, is you go from weekly to every other week or once a month, and then like an as needed, and stuff crops up, and then people say, hey, I got some things going on. Can you have a session or two? I could come. And then, so it's kind of, because life never ends and the struggles don't end, and having a safe place to work on things is a good thing. I mean, I think everybody could benefit from therapy at one point or another, and kind of like a personal trainer. It's like, well, you might exercise, but then every once in a while go into a personal trainer and they might give you a few, you really want to work your cardio, let's meet for a few. And then now your life takes place outside of this session, in therapy. I tell clients they're the ones who are I read this book about the heroic client. Is the clients are the ones really doing all the work. Like my work is like within that therapy hour, they have to take what they learn and then apply it in their actual life all week long. And that's the hard work. Just like that's the hard work. Yeah. If you talk to a physical therapist or a personal trainer and they give you exercises to do, and you could go, okay, I think that'll help. Well, now you got to go do it. And that's the hard part.
Yeah, I'm a power lifter, and I started lifting 5 or 6 years ago. And everything you're saying applies to that same thing, because you don't always see the drastic changes right away. It takes consistency and time. And then suddenly when you start to see it, it's very motivating to continue to help yourself. And like you kind of talked about and touched in the very first part of this interview was just how like mind, body, and then I'll add spirit all goes together, because by changing my biochemistry is therapy in itself,
Exactly. Yeah, it does that you're getting all the neurochemicals and endorphins and dopamine, and then you have this, it doesn't end when the exercise ends. It can help the whole day go better. So it's very powerful stuff.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'll end with this. Well, not that this is ending, but my last question is, and I said this a little earlier, like I'm currently like a part-time RBT here and there, but I really want to explore, and this is where I need your guidance, or I don't need it, but I want your guidance.
Sure.
I really want to explore different therapies. I'm like super interested in sex therapy or energy manifesting therapies. What are all your credentials? I know some of them. And what additional licenses or certifications do you have, or just talk to me about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there are, hundreds of therapy modalities out there. No one can be an expert at all of them. And anyone who says they're eclectic, they really mean just they're taking a few,
Right.
Because there's no way you can read all the books and all the manuals. No. And I'm a big believer in common factors, they call it, or the dodo bird verdict is that, and that comes from Alice in Wonderland, where they ran a caucus race, and at the end, the dodo bird says everybody wins and all must have prizes. Is that when you say like which therapy modality is best, is life isn't that simple. You can't make a matrix of say, here's the disorder, so here's the therapy that's gonna fix that. It's like we're too complicated. We don't fit neatly into diagnostic categories. There's all sorts of problems on the reliability of the Bible of mental health disorders, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of mental disorders. From the American Psychiatric Association is the one who does that. So, you know, I'm a licensed psychologist, a licensed specialist in school psychology. I've done a lot of CBT and mindfulness work, the reality therapy, solution-oriented, positive psychology, and then I incorporate I incorporate like the Stoic philosophy and Buddhist psychology a lot into my work. So I'm not a big believer in, well, it's like get the training, but like the certifications only go so far. You always have to be ready. You can't push someone through a certain treatment regimen and just say, well,
hold on.
Hold on. Don't bring that up because we're on, you know, stage 2 or step 2 of my manualized treatment plan. And this is like, no, you got to meet a person with where they're at. And I'd say part of our work, I think it was Jerome Frank who said this, it was something about like, when you meet with your clients, what part of our work is connecting with them, and then you agree on the process of change. What is the thing that is going? So you know, I remember one of my professors asking this. Is I had some interpersonal therapy work, sort of psychodynamic, and he was CBT, and he said, "Well, how do you change? You know, how does a client change?" And I remember everyone in the class kind of looking at each other, like according to the interpersonal, like, wait, how do we change? Like, oh, well, you kind of have a safe.
You have to want to change.
Yeah. It's the old, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? One, but it's got to want to change, you know. So there's got to be that. But like the common factors is the conduit for change is the relationship. So the stronger the therapeutic alliance, the more likely someone's going to improve from the therapy process. And yes, have some strategies and approaches, but if you're the best at CBT and you've written 50 books and they think you're a pompous ass, you're not going to go anywhere. It doesn't matter.
No change.
You're not going to change. The modal number of therapy sessions is 1. So that's the most common is they go in and they're like, I don't like this person. I'm out of here. You know, so you have to work to really connect and build the alliance, and then agreeing upon goals. What is it you want to work on? What do you what would help you be happier in life or less stress? What would that look like? You know, explain, well, you know, I'm unhappy in my marriage and I want to improve the relationship. Okay, what would that look like? You know, imagine you're to wake up tomorrow and your marriage has improved. How would we know it? If we had a video before and after, like, you know, what things would you see? Okay, so that's what you're looking for. Now, my job is to connect with them on their goals. So it's not my goals in mind for my clients, it's their goals for themselves. And I try to connect with them and I partner with them in the change process. So they're already bringing a lot of resources and positives to the table. And what I want to do is tap into those through the conduit of the relationship. I want to be able to harness like their own strengths, resiliency, empower them. Right. And that, you know, like some of those questions in solution oriented, you know, and they're like, well, you know, I can never do public speaking, you know, or it's so scary for me. And anytime I can never raise my hand in class, and it might be never, you ever, well, you know, sometimes I do, but that's, you know, sometimes, well, tell me when is it that you do raise your hand in class and answer questions? Well, there are these times I can think of when I knew the material and okay, so when you really know the material and you're feeling more confident, then you're more likely to raise your hand. And how did those go? When they went fine. Okay, so it's not that you never raise your hand and can speak out in public. It's sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But let's understand why you can sometimes. What if there's stuff to build on there?
Right.
Learn from those exceptions and say it's not no problem is 100% in every single circumstance. So through the relationship, I can connect with the person enough that they trust me to reveal things, to talk about things, to open up so that we can together search and find those things. And also I pitch ideas, say, look, I don't know if this is going to help you or not, but here's an idea I have, and I want you to give me your feedback on it and see if this is something you can use. Then I pitch it, I give it my best spin, and say, is that something you think, how does that click with you? Does that resonate? If not, no big deal. There's other things we can so you're checking, you're checking in with the client, and that's where I'm honoring them in the change process, because if I think it's a great technique and they think it's crappy, it's crappy.
Then it's crap.
Yeah, I don't get to say for my clients, what works and doesn't.
You're like, nope, we're doing this.
Yeah, too bad, And you can think of, like, I don't know, if you went to a personal trainer for a workout and they say, well, for your cardio to improve, you got to do spin classes, and you're like, I've tried those. I don't really like them. Too bad. You need to do spin classes. Like, no, there's a lot of ways you can improve your cardio. You don't just have to go to spin classes. Like, why would you say it? So that's the way I think of it, is like, create that relationship, look at what goals they have, and then you have some ideas that you sort of pitch to them to see what resonates.
Where they're at.
Where they're at. You might create a framework of, like, whether it's DBT or cognitive behavior therapy. But no, some clients like CBT, it's great if that client likes it. If they're not into it, don't push it. Find another way. I'm I've done martial arts a long time, and a big fan of Bruce Lee. And one of the things he said is use no way as way. So that idea, because he came from, traditional, in the 60s and stuff, when he was really honing his martial arts skills, it was like you were a Kung Fu stylist, a Taekwondo stylist, a karate, a judo, it's one or the other. And everybody said our style is best. And Bruce Lee came along, and even though he got trained in a traditional Wing Chun style of Kung Fu, he was like, no, he called it a classical mess. He was like, no, you just use what works. He had a crazy idea, use what works. And if you have long legs and a long reach, you might, do this. If you're more low to the ground, you might do this, and if you have multiple attackers, you might need to do that. If it's in
range. That's funny, because that's pretty genius, but it's also pretty logical.
Exactly. It seems so commonsensical. Like at this point, you're like, no, duh.
Yeah,
but like at the time,
it wasn't.
He was having, people, said, no way. Like,
he was the risk taker.
Yeah, he was. He was one who he broke the mold there and really said what everybody should have been saying, but no one really caught on to it. And so I think of that with therapy is use no way as way. Find what works for you, what feels genuine and clicks with you, because you'll be better at it than something you dislike. But early on, I thought, I need to just be a CBT expert, because that's the most efficacious. And the research shows when you pit head-to-head therapies against one another, and you randomly assign clients to different, like major depressive disorder to interpersonal therapy versus CBT versus DBT versus ACT versus mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, all these, basically there's no difference. The best predictive factor is the strength of the therapeutic alliance.
The rapport between the two.
The rapport. So find what works for you, and, you know, experiment, try different things. And then if you love DBT, learn a lot of DBT. If you love ACT, learn a lot of ACT. And then just know, not everybody's, it's not going to resonate with every single client, no matter who it is. You know, you can't help every single person that walks through the door.
Right. And then to wrap up the ethics, don't sleep with them. And then you're
don't sleep with them, and you're really good, you know? Yeah. And I believe, you know, failing successfully, if you don't help a client, like, it's okay to just say, look, you know, we've met for a number of sessions, and I know you wanted, you know, to make progress on your anxiety. And I use these ratings called the outcome rating scale. And then there's a session rating scale, ORS and SRS, that Barry Duncan and Scott Miller started this, that measuring progress from session to session with an outcome rating. It's a real quick and dirty scale that you can use. And they found it's a good idea to check and measure whether clients are improving or not from session to session.
Having a metric for them.
Yes, and then at the end they rate the session on how well the session did we work on and talk about what you wanted to.
Like where they're at, what's going on.
Where they're at with the session. Like if I had any missteps, you know, if I said something that you know, got you upset or whatever. And so you're having these ongoing conversations with clients about, are things improving? Is your life improving? Are you getting what you want out of this? If not, let's try some different angles. And after a certain point, and you build this in on the front end, you say, look, I can't help, I don't help every single client, who I try my best, but if I don't, let's monitor it together. I don't want to waste your time or money. You know, if you're not getting what you want out of here,
there's no point.
I don't want you spending your money, like hard-earned money on therapy sessions.
It's not a good energy transaction.
No, not at all. And just say, look, if the best way I can help you is pointing you to a different therapist, a different direction, then that's my new role. And we'll like explore it. Maybe it's group therapy. Maybe it's a dialectical behavioral therapy or something else. Who knows? But, you know, that might be my role, because if, you know, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. It's like, after like, you know, 8-10 sessions, if they haven't improved at all, don't wait till like, no, it might be session 201 that things really start to click. It's like, no.
It doesn't have to be that extreme.
No.
Oh, okay.
Not at all.
That's good advice. That's great with the metric. I haven't learned that yet. If that's even a thing we learned, by the way. Yeah,
probably won't be, but it's a good one to check into, because it's real easy to incorporate in your practice. And it's good to have a conversation about how things went, because a lot of times, like, it's not my perception of how well the session went that counts. It's the client's. And
no, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like if you went out to eat, the chef can't tell you liked that meal, right? You have to know it's too salty. I don't like a cream-based sauce. The Alfredo is way too heavy. You know, that's the So we, you know, try to give the client a voice in this process and not just do it a top-down kind of thing.
Great idea. It's actually, I realized, like, my husband does that with he's about to be a chiropractor, and he's doing that already in clinic at his residency, learning how to do the measurement. I think, how are you feeling? What's come of this? Is this improved, etc. So that makes sense to do this on a therapeutic level as well.
Right. It seems like a no-brainer, but hardly any therapists use it. But it can really save you, and it could be another conversation. But I've had a few times where, you know, I've had missteps, and a client at the session rating, like, kind of dinged me lower, and then I would say,
"What happened?"
Yeah, I mean, like, one quick example from years ago. A client came in and it was his first session, and I said, well, you know, what brings you here today? You know, and he real quickly said, well, my father was murdered. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so horrible. So I, you know, talked to him, and we worked on that for a while. I was like, so, when was your father murdered? And, when did the murder happen? It must have been horrible when you found out your father was murdered, just sprinkled that in because that's what the client said, his language. And I was trying to use. So at the end, he rated the session as pretty low. And I was like, ooh, I was surprised. And I said, so, I don't remember his name, but like, Jake, I noticed, the ratings are kind of low here. I'm really sorry. It seems like I was, not quite in sync with you. And I was wondering, what I could do different, what could help you. Yeah, better session. He said, well, you could quit saying my father was murdered. And I was like,
oh no.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, and in my mind, I was thinking, I thought I was using my client's language and I didn't want to say.
But I guess you overdid it for him, for his.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't say it that many times. I was conscious. I wasn't saying murder. But, I didn't want to say he passed away or he died because he emphasized the murder. And so, and I was like, oh man. So I apologized and said, man, I am so sorry. I promise I won't say that again. Yeah. And he came back and then his ratings went up and I helped him with some stuff. But had I not asked and not done the ratings, I wouldn't have caught that. He would have probably not come back.
Yeah, you wouldn't have helped him and it wouldn't have helped you either.
Right. So I, turned a loss into a win, at least for that client. Yeah.
Well, and for many others, because like it helped you. So you're like, hey,
don't
repeat murder more than once.
Or, I got to check with the client, because maybe if I did it too few, or never used it, a client might say, hey, you kept saying he died and he didn't die. He was murdered. Yeah.
Right.
Like, oh,
okay.
Yeah. So that's where you never know and you can't mind read. You have to check in with your client. You want to create the type of relationship that the client can give you honest feedback as to whether you're on target or not.
Right.
And because you can't make a course correction unless you're off course.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. Using this metric at the end. I'm definitely going to be utilizing this.
Yeah. Super. Well, does that, we covered a lot of.
I know we did. Thank you.
Thank
you for this interview, by the way.
Sure thing. My pleasure. It was a great conversation. I think you're really on your way. And I like, the working with adults on the spectrum is such a needed area. Oh my gosh, you're going to be so busy because the number of folks that could benefit from someone who knows how to work with the special needs of this particular population, because you really do need to know what you're doing. If you haven't worked with people on the spectrum, it's
it's different.
It's different, and you need to have some extra tools and training, and not a lot of people have that, and so that will serve you well. And I think you'll be doing great service to the community and helping a lot of folks. So good luck on your journey, and I'm happy to help you in the future if you need to reach out. And
if I'm ever in Austin, I'll drop in.
Yeah, go have coffee or lunch or whatever. I'll show you the office, but. So I'll do my sign off for the Reasonably Good Life. This has been Dr. Mike Brooks of the Reasonably Good Life with my guest, Karlys Fritsch, who's been asking a lot about the field of psychology and the practice of therapy. And we wish Karlys the best of luck in her journeys. And my sign off here for the Reasonably Good Life, Karlys, is be curious, be flexible, be kind, and for goodness sakes, be reasonable. So.
That's great.